This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody. It's draft day, the biggest day on the NFL calendar. Thank you for taking time on this Thursday to listen to DocNJock, as well. The first Pistons playoff game in several seasons. The Pistons coming on the heels of their first playoff win in over 15 years. It's crazy when I actually found out and realized, sitting at the computer watching the Pistons win, that playoff win was the first playoff win for the Detroit Pistons in the history of our podcast. Over 1,000 podcasts combined with wrestling and DocNJock, and the Pistons had never, ever won a playoff game, and it just hits you like, holy crap, from where they were to where they are. We're definitely going to talk about the Pistons and Tigers later on, but it's draft day. It's the best day on the NFL calendar. People are now going to pay attention to how the teams across the league restock their talent. Who's going to go where? It's craziness. Nobody knows after basically the first three picks what's going to happen. Nobody really knows what's going to happen with the Detroit Lions. That's what makes it fun. So we're definitely in a minute here after we talk about Jameson Williams, going to break down and talk about what Adam thinks is best for the draft, what I think is going to happen. As we're talking and recording this, my mock draft, my final is going to go live, and you can check it out. I'll send it to Adam so he can react to it as well. But, let's talk about it. It's crazy, how this goes, in that if you listen to podcasts on Lions on SI or listen to Adam and I, we've speculated about the future of certain players many times because you can't pay everybody. It's normal speculation like, okay, Jameson Williams is going to command $30 million because of his speed, talent, what he can bring to the table, but not yet. The Lions will give him his fifth-year extension and potentially have him under control for 2025 and 2026. But it's normal to say, well, if you're not going to get that contract, and Jameson's representatives are going to ask the Lions, what do you think? He'll get a sense of what the team thinks. He'll get a sense, okay, it's kind of not in that we're going to get the love direction. We're not going to get the quote-unquote push like Amon-Ra, get it done fast. It's going to be wait and see, let's see how it plays out, that kind of vibe. So Jameson kind of knows. So then talk's going to start about, well, maybe he could be traded. Could the team? And then especially when you can read into, the Lions brought in a wide receiver that's really high end from the Texas Longhorns. So it's not a direct lineage. It's basically reading between the lines. And that's what an NFL reporter does. Me and Adam do it. All the reporters do it. That's what you spend your time doing, is going, okay, what does it mean that Matthew Golden showed up to the Lions? Oh, they could be looking to replace Jameson Williams. Dan Campbell says it. He goes, hey, we need to get younger at wide receiver, which Adam and I joked, which really was code for cheaper. So it is not shocking if you follow along with the cycle of the NFL that this is a roster decision. Now, does that mean he's going to get traded the day this gets released? Maybe, maybe not. It'd be unlikely. But to bury your head in the sand and say, don't talk about it, no. Adam, me, all NFL reporters like to play GM. It's part of the job. We can't just bury our head in the sand and say, the draft's going to come, the Lions pick the receiver. That's great. They're going to have 6 receivers. No, the next question, logically, that smart people, podcasters, those that are paying attention are going to ask is, what does this move mean for the Lions? What does it mean for the players on the roster? And quite simply put, there's going to be a decision for Jameson Williams in the future, and relatively quickly because of how fast the NFL cycle works. After this year, if he's still on the team, there's going to be a question if he's going to be on the roster because he's an asset. He's going to demand over $25 million, and there is such a thing as a salary cap. Now, the natural sleuths are going to pay attention to his social media. Adam and I have a lot more fun things to look at besides the social media accounts of the players. That's the one thing I typically don't do. But people are swirling. They were talking, did Jameson unfollow the Lions? Does this mean he's pissed? Look, all that stuff is fun and definitely podcast internet banter. but I don't care if he follows or does not follow the Lions. I don't think that dictates if he's happy with the team. There's one thing, and relatively, it's 1A and 1B, and hear me out, because some people don't like to hear it, Kenny. Bottom line, how you show love to a player is not targets, it's not throwing him the ball, it's not taking social media pictures, it's dollars and cents. Do you go to his agent and say, hey, you're our guy, we're going to pay you, don't worry about it, go do your thing? Or do you tell him, hey, we're going to make you wait, you got to earn it, you got to kind of show us a little bit more? That's it. That is all that this is with Jameson Williams, is he probably knows the team is going to make him earn those dollars. And to me, if you ask me from the inside perspective, I think that Jameson Williams' future is short, not because he's a bad guy or he's suspended all the time, but simply put, you can't pay the whole roster $25 million a year. And everybody knows that the position you can replace that's upcoming tonight at 8 o'clock is wide receiver. They're coming in droves. Hell, Brad Holmes doesn't, if he wants to be lazy, he can just park his car at Ohio State and say, all right, figure out a way to get half of these guys, and you can build a roster of wideouts that are coming from Ohio State. So I'm not as concerned or as upset, because I think Brad Holmes could replace Jameson Williams. Not the speed, but I think that this whole Jameson Williams saga and the fans that are kind of clutching their pearls, a little bit of an overreaction. I recognize your loyalty to JMO, but it's a salary cap league, and sometimes you're gonna have to detach from some players. And I've always been that kind of guy. Whereas if I can find a deal that's more valuable, I'm out on a player.
I agree with you 100%. He is a replaceable commodity. He is a position that I believe in the NFL, you can generally go find a receiver who's going to be worth a dime in a bag of mothballs. You can just kind of go grab anybody as long as you got a decent quarterback and you got an offensive coordinator who can scheme stuff up. The thing is, where the Lions are at right now, I don't know if it makes sense to trade him. And look, we've talked about it. I'm not paying him. I'm not signing him to an extension. I'm not bringing him back. He's got his 5th year, and then we're kind of done. His maturity, a lot of the stuff he has done, just doesn't float with me, just doesn't jive with me. But he is a valuable piece to this team right now. So I'm not necessarily looking to trade him this year. I'm not necessarily looking to get out from underneath that contract that they're going to have to pay him when they re-up his 5th year option. I'm not looking to do all that because he is your legit only deep threat on this ball club. He is a guy who, when he's able to be on the field, when he's healthy, when he's not suspended, when he's got all his stuff in a row, he's a game changer for you. He allows you to do different stuff. Like, he is the equivalent of what a guy like Deebo Samuel is, mixed with a guy like, in his prime, Devontae Adams, mixed with a guy like a Christian McCaffrey. Like, he gives you different options, and he can line up in different places all over the field. He's a guy where you can hand the ball off on an end around, and he's going to take it 45 yards to the house. He's also a guy who you just do a go route, and he's going to streak down the field for 55 yards, get open, and score a touchdown. He is a game changer. And because of that, I just don't think it makes sense to trade him right now because you are in your Super Bowl window. You are looking to maximize your abilities when you get into the playoffs. You're looking to win and lift the Lombardi trophy. So trading him right now, I don't understand where all this talk is coming from. Like I said, after his 5th year option is done, we're just going to part ways. It's going to be cool. It's going to be good. Hey, man, thanks. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate you coming in. We appreciate everything you gave us for the last 5 years. But we're going to move in a different direction, and best to you and all your future endeavors. And we're just gonna move on. And it's a lot of things that you said. You can't pay everybody. He's a wide receiver. Wide receivers, not to be rude, they're kind of a dime a dozen. And you got your wide receiver. Your guy is Amon-Ra St. Brown. The guy who you want to model and mold your team after is that guy. Now, sorry for you, that guy is not the deep threat. Sorry for you, that guy is more steak than sizzle. Sorry for you that guy is not that elite game changer, the guy who can completely flip a game on its axis. But what you do have is you've got a guy who's going to go out there and can catch 15 balls in a ball game, give you 200 yards, and he's going to score you some tough touchdowns. Oh, on top of that, he's going to be blocking to spring your running backs, and he's going to be a guy who's going to do a lot of the dirty work. On top of it, it's a mentality thing with that guy that you have. So it's not like it's a bad thing. It's just a trade-off. You've got a guy in JMO who is a Maserati, and you've got a guy in Amon-Ra St. Brown who is a Dodge pickup truck. You know, he's reliable, he's dependable. He's going to go out there, he's going to do the hard stuff and the tough stuff. And then you got somebody who's a lot of flash and a lot of sizzle and can take you from 0 to 60 in no time. So it's just kind of what you want to do, but you can't pay all these guys. You can really only have one expensive wide receiver. You're looking at adding pieces to your defense. You've got an expensive quarterback. You've got an expensive tackle in Penny Sewell. You're going to have to pay Jahmyr Gibbs if you want to keep him. I don't know if that's necessarily the smart thing with running backs because their tread is generally very limited. You've got to make a decision coming up on Sam Laporta, and I would argue with you that Sam Laporta is much more important to this offense than JMO is to this offense, and that's just because having a guy who can do those intermediate routes and a guy who can be much more available and has much more opportunity in the red zone is a much more valuable piece to me than a guy who can take the top off of defense. And look, we're talking about the offensive side. Well, defensively, you've got to pay Aiden Hutchinson. You're talking about keeping Kirby Joseph. Brian Branch will be due a contract. You're going to have to figure out what you're going to do with Jack Campbell. You're looking to add to that defensive line because really Aleem McNeil's probably not going to be ready for your first game. Aiden Hutchinson might not be ready for your first game. And if we're being realistic, those guys might not be ready for the first couple of weeks. So you've got to add a couple of pieces there. So where do you save some money? Where can you save about $15 million? And I get it. It would be trading a guy like Jameson Williams. Like I said, unless you can guarantee me that you're going to get some type of similar production from something in the draft, I don't know if I do that right now. I think I sign him to that 5-year extension, and we maybe look this year to draft his replacement, or maybe we hit free agency and we go and we try to bring a guy in that we can kind of repurpose and get a little bit more out of. But it's nuts because when we put this on the roster, I didn't really feel like this was a big talking point. I didn't feel like this was a big deal. To me, it just kind of felt like it was whatever, right? Like I just kind of assumed that we all knew, or we all kind of were on the same page. Like they might extend him, but they're definitely going to sign him to his 5th-year extension. And after that, we're probably moving on. I didn't think that this was going to be this big of a deal. And yet it seems like it's been the only thing that's being talked about, at least here locally, as far as draft coverage goes, because it sounds like he might be made available in the draft. Like he might be a guy who might get packaged with a draft pick to go get somebody else.
Exactly.
And that is kind of where I'm at, right? Like if you could go get Trey Hendrickson and you trade a second and you trade JMO and you get Hendrickson and you get a 3rd-round pick back, I think that's pretty good. You know what I'm saying? Now, I don't think they're going to do that, but like that's what I'm thinking is probably going to happen. Or maybe Brad Holmes packages him with something else to move up in the draft. I could see that taking place as well. What would you say is JMO's value right now, and what would you be looking to get back for him?
I think just based on the fact he's only had one good year of productivity, you can't get the same first-round value. I think you can get a second-round pick. I think you could get maybe a second and a fifth. You know, something where you get a premium day 2 and a day. I think 1 day 2, 1 day 3 in that mix. And I would be shocked, simply put, because of the fact that look, your biggest investment is Jared Goff, and Jared Goff makes $50 million, and he needs toys. And Jared Goff, if you take away a toy, even if it is expensive, is going to make your football team much worse. So I think you just ride it out, give him the additional $15 million. He earned it based on doing everything that he was supposed to do last year, other than, play all the games. I think that he showcased he could be the number 2, and he's talented. I think he gets you between 7 and 10 touchdowns. He's your deep threat. And also, too, here's the caveat. You have a new offensive coordinator, and you're going to
do you want to take toys away from him? I don't think you do. You want to give that guy as much ammo as possible to devise a game plan to help you win games. You already got a tough road when you're replacing Ben Johnson.
Exactly. So you need John Morton to have as many weapons as humanly possible. So I'm thinking that the Lions are going to keep Jameson on the roster for 2025, then 2026, and then if he gets a mega offer somewhere else, you go in the draft, you can get 2 replacements this year and next year, and one of them or both of them combined can be a player that can go out and be productive. So, listen, I get everybody's, and the reason why it blew up is because we speculated on it. Other outlets started locally to kind of talk about it, and then Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated put it nationally in a national column. And then once I and others piggyback on it, people talk about it. So that's just how it goes. It's just straight up like, okay, roster building 101. If a player is going to command this much money and you already got a guy making $30 million, it's natural to say, okay, a team could do it. A team, I would not be shocked if the Lions did. I'd be surprised. We're not predicting it. I would be genuinely surprised if a team comes after Jameson Williams and gives up capital because of how much the value is of getting. But you just need one team. You just need one team to pick up the phone, like a team like the Cowboys or the Texans.
How about
that
the
kind of have a young
49ers?
Quarterback that needs a weapon. You could.
How about a team like the 49ers?
A team like the 49ers?
You think about this, right?
Yep.
They traded away a ton of assets because they're looking to sign Brock Purdy. That team was so talent rich on the offensive side of the ball, and they've just kind of let guys go. They've got Brandon Ayuk coming back. He's going to be injured, might miss some time. If you're looking for a guy who's a little bit of a game changer and a guy who you could maybe instill as your number one, could you see JMO going to the 49ers and taking on that Deebo Samuel role, playing alongside a guy like Christian McCaffrey, and then when Brandon Ayuk gets back, you can kind of go back and do what you want to do? I feel like the best comparison for JMO is a guy like Deebo Samuel. A lot of the end arounds, a lot of the little bit of running plays, and the guy who can just stretch the field for you.
Yep.
I don't know. Just thinking, throwing it out there.
Yeah, very wise. It's very much a reasonable thing to talk about. That teams could make the call. It's draft night. Surprises happen all the time. So I understand people's loyalty. We're never going to run it by the fans and have them be supportive. They would be devastated. They would be sad, but they've been sad before. The team moved on from C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They've moved on from Zadarius Smith. Brad Holmes don't have a problem making it so that you guys have to go online and be like, well, and have to react. So that's what is good is that when Adam and I started the podcast, there were so many bad players that we detach from them quickly. We just look at it like, okay, how good is this football player and how much more can the player perform to help the team win? And then if there's a better player, we move on. So I think that's how you handle it as a professional and as a podcaster. But fans, I get it. You have loyalties. You're spending $100 and then you had to spend another $100 to get his jersey because he switched on you. You develop some brand loyalty. So I get it, and I have no problem with it. So now we turn our attention to the festivities, the big night. It sucks, and you are right. The buzz around the draft is lower because the team's picking 28th, and you're picking later in every round. And so the Lions' first pick is not going to be till 11:30 at night on Thursday, and that's going to be well after you're emotionally drained after a Pistons game. And the Lions are a good football team, and so many people believe that the draft pick is going to have to compete to even start. I do think the first-round pick will compete to be a starter, but after that, you would find it that there's going to be hard pressed for a lot of these guys this year to even start. So that's why people are not as excited, and coming on the heels of a free agency that was kind of a dud. So the draft buzz has been much, much lower. Mock drafts aren't talked about as much. We didn't even really review too many mock drafts because it's pretty straightforward. People want to know one thing and one thing only. And I'll ask you, because you've had a chance now to look at them all. You've had a chance. It's basically the draft coverage is who's the edge? Who's it going to be? What round? That's it. That's all people want to talk about, because I can share the biggest metrics on our podcast where people listen the most is our talk about Zadarius Smith, Marcus Davenport, Aiden Hutchinson. It spikes. People listen and gravitate. And then people in the draft want to know, okay, who's the edge rusher going to be opposite of Aiden? Is it going to be Donovan Ezuraku? Is it going to be Shamar Stewart, Mike Green, James Pierce? You're going to gamble, trade up. That's the only thing people care about. So I did my latest mock draft. It's out now, my final. No more mocks from me. Other writers will put out whatever they want. We'll share other mock drafts that get put out before the draft, but mine's done. And I go a little bit different. We'll tease that. I go different. I go edge rusher later in the draft because of the depth. So, Cuz, tell me, and you can give me your thoughts on the draft, but tell me about the edge, baby, because that's where the money's at. Who is this guy that sacks the quarterback that can probably start week 2 because that's around the time Marcus Davenport might have to deal with something? Who's the guy? Who's the edge? What round? Who's your draft crush? Who's the guy that is going to be the guy that's going to be paid attention the most amongst the peoples?
So I kind of feel like there's a couple of guys, but I think the one guy who I've been kind of looking at a lot, and a guy who could really be there for them when they get to their draft pick at 28 is Donovan Ezeraku.
Yep.
The edge out of Boston College.
Big boy.
Yeah. Look, a lot of upside. This is a guy who played really, really well last year. Now I know it's Boston College, bit of a smaller school, bit of a smaller conference, but the guy performed and he showed out, and he seems like his character kind of fits with what Dan Campbell likes as far as a football player goes. And I feel like he's a guy who can come in, help set an edge so Aiden can get to the quarterback. He's also a guy who doesn't have a problem getting to the quarterback himself. And that's what you're really looking for here, right? You've got a guy who plays with his hair on fire all the time in Aiden Hutchinson. You need a guy who can come in and can do that as well, but also needs to be responsible, keep his lane gap, and be able to set that edge to kind of wall off anything that might look to escape out on his side. And I think he can do that. So he's the guy who I keep coming back to. As I keep going through, I'm looking at mock drafts. I do my own mock drafts. And he's the guy who is always available. He's always right there. I always end up coming right back to him. And he's the guy who I'm always end up selecting. So that's the guy who I'm like, okay, if they get him, I'm cool with it. Let's go. But you know how Brad Holmes does? Brad Holmes likes to draft best player available. At least that's what he tells you.
Yeah.
You said yourself, when you did your mock draft, you moved edge to the back of the draft. You moved that to probably your second or your third round.
Yep.
What are some of the positions that you want to see go in those first 3 rounds? If you've got 3 positions and you're like, Brad Holmes, we need to fill out players in these positions, and the best player available is available in those positions, what are those positions that you want to see, and who is that edge for you?
Yeah, it's one of those situations in which everyone says that there's some depth in the draft regarding edge rusher, that you can kind of wait a little bit and maybe take one on in the second round. I would say that maybe my mock is a little bit more optimistic that you get opportunities to get a defensive tackle, because I look at it like this. You feel like, and my theory is, I have the Lions taking Tyler Booker, the offensive lineman. I think that the need that my lasting vision is Jared Goff on his ass against the Commanders. And that's because Graham Glasgow was older, Taylor Decker was worn out and was not playing the best. You have a young rookie in there as well, and you need to replace that. And I think that Booker or Gray Zabel will be the pick. I'm almost certain it's going to be on the offensive line. I could be wrong based on the draft and the needs and how that plays out, but I feel like you can target a defensive edge, defensive end in the second round. You could go defensive tackle as well. So I think my first need is more offensive line, and then I would go defensive tackle. I think that you're counting on Roy Lopez to be a guy that can do some things, but he's a guy that's a journeyman. You're giving him an opportunity, but he's not proven yet. So if he struggles, now you got to turn to Broderick Martin. You got to rely on DJ Reader. You got to rely on that combination. So I'm looking offensive line, defensive tackle to go in the first couple rounds. And so that's why I love the guy from Toledo, Darius Alexander. I think that he was pretty dominant as a three technique, notching a 22 sacks in 5 years. He's NFL ready. I thought that he's got the physical tools. I think if he's there, you have a chance. And then you address some needs. My third pick at 102 is the safety, Jonas Sanker. Potentially could be replaced Brian Branch if he wants to explore getting a hefty contract. And then, I look at it from just based on the visit, Isaac Tesla at pick 130. And then I look at it like if he's there, Q Robinson, the edge, you can wait until way down the road to get an edge rusher, similarly to you getting Mekhi Wingo. If you can find value, or maybe you go a little bit sooner if you need to, if you're looking at like a Josiah Stewart or an opportunity to get somebody that can fill in. I have no problem with that. But I think early, you can address the offensive line position because it's most important. Because you not only have Jared Goff, you have two more assets in Jahmyr Gibbs that he's got to go off, and David Montgomery. So to me, I think it's a little bit overstated, the edge situation, because of the fact you have also outside linebackers. I don't know, people look at traditional edges. The Lions typically have two types. The edge setting guy that can bull rush and power set the edge so that running backs don't get outside or running quarterbacks don't get outside. That's Marcus Davenport. And then you have the more coverage Sam linebacker like a Derek Barnes, who can at times set the edge and also rush the quarterback from the end, and kind of a dual threat. It's kind of like the Mekhi Wingo role, kind of like the role that James Houston had, but he didn't develop into a well-rounded outside linebacker. So there's also opportunities to get guys that in the draft or in free agency or cuts in training camp that you can get to fill that role. So I'm happy with that. I would be happy if the Lions shored up the offensive line because if Jared Goff's on his ass, he gets pressured, you don't have time to survey the landscape, it's over. You have no chance. Your defense, you're looking at it, and I don't want to panic anybody, but if Jared Goff ain't protected, you're looking at a situation in which the Lions lose games 10-7. Like, you don't want to have a top 10 defense and an offense that don't score points. You don't want to have that. So I want to give Jared Goff as many toys as possible in 2025, and especially with his elevated cap number and your new offensive coordinator. What do you think of my mock draft? What do you think of the idea of waiting until day 2 for an edge rusher? I think listen, don't turn off the podcast. We are talking edge, but I think patience, grasshoppers. It'll be there. Brad will find the guy. Let Brad cook. He'll find a guy on day 2 or day 3 that's going to be really, really good. I think the bucket of edge rushers is pretty deep.
Yeah, and look, I think this draft sets up nicely for them to address a lot of positions on defense, specifically at edge and along the defensive line. I think going out and drafting a lot of meat up front, right? Getting an offensive tackle, getting an offensive guard, grabbing an edge rusher, grabbing a D tackle, grabbing a more traditional D end. I think those are the positions of need for this team. I think those are the positions that if in that first round, if you end up walking away with a offensive tackle or you end up walking away with an offensive guard, I think you can be happy with that. I think you'll be okay, specifically with how this draft sets up. The thing is, you're going to need Brad Holmes to come back with that second pick, and he's going to have to probably take that edge, or he's going to have to probably take that D tackle. I think that's the only thing that's going to help satisfy fans. I like what you did with your mock draft. I think it makes a ton of sense. I think with the way Brad Holmes likes to draft and what Brad Holmes likes to do, I could see him being very active in these first 2 rounds. I could see him going with an offensive lineman, whether it be a tackle or a guard, with that first pick. And then I could see him moving back up into that first round or moving around in that second round to come back and get that edge that he really likes. So I see it working out really, really well for the Lions. I think this draft sets up real nice for where they're drafting and what they need, what those positions of need are, because there's a lot of guys along the offensive line, a lot of guys along the defensive line, and it looks like that is where this is a very heavy talent pool is set in both of those position groups, right? O-line, D-line. So I think you're going to be just fine if you don't get that edge or you don't get that defensive lineman that you're looking for with your first draft pick. I think you end up getting it with your second draft pick, and you could possibly get it with your third draft pick. And look, you went through and you named a couple of guys, and you brought up a guy like Josiah Stewart. And here in Michigan, we obviously pay a lot of attention to the Michigan football team. I think a lot of people would be very excited if they end up with Josiah Stewart. I've seen him going in the third round. I've seen him going in the second round. So, he should be available for you when you're coming back up to draft in that second round, and he could possibly be there in that third round for you. And I think you'd be excited if you got him. I think he's a solid player. A guy like Jack Sawyer, he's a guy who I've kind of fallen in love with, and now he's not going to be there you're not taking him in that first round. But if he's there in that second or that third round, I mean, I'm running up and handing that ticket in. I'm like, this is my guy. I want this guy. So there's a ton of talent here. There's a lot of guys that you can add that's going to make this a better team along that defensive and offensive line. And I don't have a problem with you going with offensive tackle or offensive guard. I think that makes a ton of sense to add those players to this team because I bitched about it a lot last year. I think Taylor Decker's on his last leg, and I think he's at the end. I think Graham Glasgow was playing out of position last year. I think if you move him back to the right side, he's going to be better than what you got last year. But again, this is another guy who's getting a little bit long in the tooth. At some point, you've got to figure out what's going on with Frank Ragnow, right? Like Frank Ragnow, I think by the end of his career is going to look a lot like Tom Dempsey playing with that nub foot because his toes are so damn bad. The guy can't practice during the week. So if you need to look at possibly addressing in a center, I think you need to look at that. Or what you could do is you could draft a tackle, draft a guard. That guard could move Graham Glasgow to center to spell a guy like Frank Ragnow. And you could do that if you needed to. Look, Frank Ragnow's coming back. You're not moving him out. He's going to be here. The thing is, you might need to go find that guy in waiting, the guy to take his position, or that guy to at least battle him and possibly win that position because he's not going to go anywhere. And yes, he's an all-pro. We get it. Taylor Decker, again, another Pro Bowl caliber player. But you guys are getting long in its tooth, and it might be time for us to look in a different direction. So, again, no issues if you're drafting some of the big, strong dudes up front. Now, I brought up Brad Holmes possibly moving and shaking in this draft. What do you think the chances are that Brad Holmes moves up in the draft from 28, or do you think it's more likely that he trades back from 28, or do you see a scenario where he stays at 28, but then he moves back up into that first round?
I'm of the opinion that because money talks, and when you're strapped for cash, I think you move down. A report from Adam Schefter came out and said that teams may wait for quarterback. There's the Louisville quarterback that's out there, Jackson Dart. Maybe a team like the Giants, because they might take Abdul Carter, they want a quarterback, but they may not want one so high in the draft. They may wait till 28, where you can kind of have more of an investment. So maybe the Lions have a chance to kind of pit the Steelers or the Browns, or the Browns are sitting with the first pick of the second round. They may want to move up if they get wins. So that's what Brad can kind of start that process, which I'm kind of – it makes no sense because the Lions have, see, here's the thing too. Here's how you play the game. You could have put out a little bit of like, we're not as happy. Like you just tell Hendon, hey, we're going to say some things. You just put out there, hey, we're not interested. Like, hey, the Lions brought in Jackson Dart. The Lions brought in this guy from Louisville that everybody's been talking about just to see, But unfortunately, you got Kyle Allen, and you're like, nobody's going to believe that Tyler Show is going to be drafted by the Lions. So you didn't really create a market. But I get it. These guys know that, like, basically a lot of the GMs know, like, seriously, this is your guy. Like, you're not trading Hendon Hooker. He's in your system. You got a new offensive coordinator. We know that that's not really real. But if you can create some buzz that potentially, hey, the way you do it probably, if just sitting here spitballing with you, is you kind of just call up on draft night, you just call up the Steelers and say, hey, I got some interest, I got some buzz from the Giants. They're interested in coming back up. Hey, if you want to make a deal, you just kind of be straightforward. Hey, I'm getting some. Hopefully someone gives you a little bit of that buzz. You get two teams that want that spot to move up, and you can move down. Because I do think there's talent all across the board on day two that you can maneuver to make a pick early. You can trade next year's pick to move back in early, like around 33 to 40, to make a pick if you feel like there's a guy there. So I'm of the opinion that they're going to stay at 28 and just take an offensive lineman because they need Gray Zabel, they need Tyler Booker, they need I think Simmons from Ohio State. They need an offensive lineman really bad. And I think that that's going to be a situation in which a player could be considered the best player at that spot. So to me, it's pick at 28, option 1, trade down, option 2.
All right. I like that. I think they stay at 28, and it's a lot of like what you said, right? The talent pool is so deep here, whether it's going to be along that offensive line or whether it's going to be along that defensive line, that they can come back and they can get whatever it is that they didn't pick first, they can get that in that second round. Now, when they do get in that second round, I could see them falling in love with a guy and then moving up. You got a couple of third-round picks. You could pair that with your second-round pick. I could see you moving up and going and getting a guy.
Be aggressive. Aggressive. Nothing wrong with that. Is there a guy that you'd say, okay, let's say between 15 and 20 that you go up and get that would be impactful? Do you take a chance on a Mike Green between 15 and 20? It's tough, right?
Yeah, it is tough. I think a guy that I would maybe fall in love with would maybe be Derek Harmon.
Yeah.
That would be a guy who's kind of in that range that I would have no problem with them going up and get. And look, the thing with Derek Harmon is you don't know when Aleem McNeil's coming back, right?
Right.
You've got DJ Reader. Getting a little bit, again, another guy who's getting a little long in the tooth. You're looking to replace these guys before they age themselves out. This is a guy who you can slot in there. He's a guy who can be a disruptor. He's a guy who can get in there and really create havoc for you. And you could pair him up with, again, Aleem McNeil when he comes back, Aiden Hutchinson when he comes back. And all of a sudden, that defensive front looks real formidable and it's going to make a lot of quarterbacks uncomfortable. So, yeah, that would be a guy I could see them moving up in that first round and going and get. And I'd be cool with it.
Yeah, or if you do, maybe it's just move up a little bit to 2021 to get Kenneth Grant. I think at 6'4", 331. That's a little bit more. He's projected to the Steelers.
It's a little bit more of a cost savings there.
Yep.
As far as trading, So, yeah, for sure.
And then the one player I think that, and I'm curious your sense, would it be like Colson Loveland or Shamar Stewart? Is there a player that if they moved up or they selected at 28 that would just make you go, I might consider making a rage bait video? That's what, we talked about it on the with Christian. I said, man, part of the love of the draft is to see who the Lions get, but then the other love, really close 1A 1B is there a pick that would make Adam fly off the handle? And he laughed, and I said they haven't been doing that, but I said early in the podcast I got used to it because there were so many bad picks.
There were so many bad picks.
We joke around about the Mike Williams, Charles Rogers pick, and then we started the podcast. They would just go do some things. When they picked Hawkinson, you were just like, this is just utterly fucking crazy. And you and I have a still picture. I looked at it recently. My head was over the chair, and I'm like, a tight end? Seriously? And it ended up being real bad. And then the one that just always everybody remembers is the Ebron pick, which would have been ending up being Aaron Donald. So any pick that would almost tempt you, because I know you're dad, you're not doing the rage bait too often, but is there a rage bait player, RBP, out there for Adam?
So not a specific player.
Position.
I would say position. If they drafted a running back in the first round, I would probably go bananas and go ballistic. Same thing with tight end. Look, I know you've got to make a decision on Sam Laporta, and this could be the same thing that you're possibly looking at doing with Kirby Joseph, and then possibly the same thing you're looking at doing with Jameson Williams, where you might be drafting the replacement. I get it, but I don't want to see you take a tight end in the first round. Not when you need, not when there is so much depth and there's so many other positions that I feel like are so much more important for you to add. Like, you can come back and you can get a tight end later on. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't need to get that guy now. Like, Sam Laporta is just fine. What you've got going on with your depth chart for your tight ends is just fine. You're going to be okay. You need to address the offensive and defensive lines. If this team is going to take that next move forward, if this team is going to be able to be that threat that we all want it to be in the playoffs. Like, look, I feel like they got the regular season locked down. Did a hell of a job last year. I do not expect them to be able to duplicate that again this year. They might prove me wrong, and I'm here for it. The thing is, you got absolutely popped in the playoffs. You went on a really magical run 2 years ago, and your chance to play in a Super Bowl and possibly win a Super Bowl might have went out the door when those final 30 minutes against San Francisco. You went into this year's playoffs, and we all just expected you to handle business against Washington. And Washington, in turn, popped you in the mouth. And who got popped in the mouth? Your offensive line.
Yes.
Your defensive line. Those are the positions that have to be addressed.
No
and the
doubt.
thing is, your defensive line fixes and hides a lot of problems.
Sure does.
That you can kind of shy away from adding to or addressing or even being concerned about fixing. You add some more daddies up front, all of a sudden, Your secondary's got all the time in the world. And a guy like Terrion Arnold, who's been very grabby and has been flagged a lot, and at certain points this season got exposed, all of a sudden that window gets shorter. He can cover a guy now for 3 seconds, and the play is dead. That those guys don't have the opportunity to get open. Ernest Rakestraw all of a sudden gets inserted into the lineup, and now he's playing starting minutes, and he's your starter opposite of Terrion Arnold, and all of a sudden he looks like he's a prodigy. Why? Because you've got big guys up in front of the quarterback's face harassing and making him move and making him throw off platform. You do that, all of a sudden your secondary and your linebacking core looks unstoppable. So address the guys up front. It makes everything else better. We talk about it all the time. Address the dudes in the trenches because they cover up a lot of problems that you just can't spend your money on. You just can't. Like, because of the salary cap, you're confined to what you can do. You have to be smart when you spend this money. That's why everybody's talking about giving Kirby Joseph an extension. I like Kirby Joseph. I think Kirby Joseph is a really good player. This is my thing. If I have to pick between giving some money to Aiden Hutchinson and somebody else along that defensive line, or Aiden Hutchinson and Kirby Joseph, I'm going with the defensive line because you've got Brian Branch who can fill in. You can go draft another safety. You can put guys in front of your secondary who will make your secondary look that much better. And it's those dudes up front who wreck shop with the opponent's offensive line and get hands and faces of quarterbacks that deflect balls, that force them to throw when they're not ready to throw, and force them to throw when the play hasn't fully developed, that then turns into turnovers for guys in your secondary. So that's where I'm investing my money. And look, Kirby Joseph, forever and a day, will hold a special place in my heart because he killed and he took the life out of Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers hasn't been the same player since Kirby Joseph came in the league. So forever and a day, this guy will hold a very magical place in my heart because I can't stand Aaron Rodgers. I wish he would get hit by a bus. So I'm cool with him, but at the same point, I'm not looking to pay you and I'm not looking to make you the highest paid safety. Not when I can spend more money on guys up front that make other dudes look better behind you. It's just not what I'm doing.
Big night, Thursday. Tune in to @Detroit Podcast. Let us know what you think. 11:30 at night. If you're still up, we'll have content. I can't wait to break it all down next week with Adam as the 3 days shake out. 7 picks, but Brad Holmes is going to move all over the place. Maybe try to get back into the 5th round because they don't have one. Saturday will be the most active day where the Lions have a couple picks in the 7th round. So Brad Holmes will talk every day after the picks. The player will talk as well, so you're going to get a lot of insight. Stay tuned to Detroit Sports Podcast for all your insider analysis regarding everything that's going on with the Detroit Lions. Now, the best part is that the Lions have sparked the grit mentality. Not with the Red Wings. They're eliminated, and Dylan Larkin's spouting off, but we're just going to disregard it.
Dylan Larkin's over here pissing and moaning.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it next week.
My general manager didn't make a trade.
It bummed
shut
us
up,
out.
bitch.
It was so sad. Well, you know what? I'm not going to lie, because it segues perfectly. The Pistons made a move, and maybe Steve Yzerman could take a hint that a deal to add somebody for depth might spark the mental, psychological belief that this team can do something. And look what happened. The first playoff win on the road against the Knicks. First and foremost, Jalen Brunson is an unbelievable player to try and flop to that degree, to do anything necessary to try and get a call. It sparked a hilarious tweet that you can check out @Detroit Podcast with Will Ferrell. I'm not going to repeat it because it was just so funny to say it. I thought about not and send, but I said, you know what's funny as hell because he's flopping. But look, kudos to the Pistons. Weathered the storm without Isaiah Stewart. Very much in the series. If you come back down 2-0, nobody believes that the hype around LCA would have been there, but not to the degree that everybody's excited. Look, first and foremost, not that hard. Play Final Countdown for these people at LCA who are paying $250 for row 20. Are you kidding me? I'm not doing that. I wouldn't do that. I think it's a little bit outrageous for that kind of price, but I get it. The fans are crazy, and the secondary market is wild. But at the same token, this fan base deserves a playoff celebration. Thursday at 7 will be fun. Let the fans that are there enjoy it. Play Final Countdown for all the fans to pop. let them enjoy it. And I think that if you look at it, the Pistons play a little bit more physical. They can wear down the Knicks. If you can weather their runs, there's a realistic chance Pistons in 6 could happen. Now, you saw a little bit in Game 2 when you watch it, almost had a meltdown watching it going, oh, hell no. I've watched that, what happened in the fourth quarter, a dozen times in the last 2 years, where officials get involved. They're calling ticky-tack bullshit. Jalen Brunson's flopping, getting calls, and the Knicks were able to work their way back into the game. Terrible, terrible officiating. And my tweet was, it's hard to watch NBA basketball that looks like this. This is embarrassing. This is not what people want to watch. It's not best for business. So now that it flips to Detroit, we better not see some bullshit NBA action where they try to make sure this thing goes 7, because I don't know, because I would be worried that the officials would make it so that, hey, this is a ratings ploy and we're going to try and fuck the Detroit Pistons out of realistic game. Let them play, because I think talent for talent, it's going to go back and forth. I think that the Pistons can weather the runs defensively. There's a chance Isaiah Stewart does return, but with the Pistons winning Game 2, it feels like the Pistons are not as much of a long shot to win this as maybe you and I thought when they first started. Their length is a little bit predominant, and then the X factor. We got an X factor, cuz Cade looks like he's blossoming right in front of our eyes. After a bad Game 1, based on inexperience, Game 2 was a lot better, where he took control, forced his way into the lane, made the shots when he needed to. And cuz here's the best part, and here's what you and I love about sports. The Pistons went into the Garden and were able to beat the New York Knicks, where your dogs behind Cade Cunningham, Beasley, and Hardaway, AWOL, now nowhere to be found, Brick City in their three-point attempts. That's not going to happen anytime soon. So I think that if you're able to escape and win a playoff game on the road in a tough environment with your second and third options stinking up the joint, this is good. I think it's going to be, probably my prediction is, you're going to dominate Game 3, and then the Knicks are going to force their way to tie it at 2-2. I want to see this get to 5-6 games in a deep series, because it's going to play out, like we said, back and forth swings. We still haven't had the last-second heroics yet, but right now, the Pistons, and I think the biggest thing from my end is, can you weather the storms when you have a lead and you're inexperienced and a team is starting to get momentum? Because the Knicks can get hot real fast offensively.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? You've got to be able to withstand that tide, and then you've got to be able to counterpunch when they punch you back in the face. And look, I think this series is going to go 7. And I think at this time, look, I picked the Knicks. After watching these first 2 games, I feel like the Pistons should be up 2-0, man.
Right.
I feel like the Pistons should be up 2-0. I think maybe one of the best things might have happened with that first game getting away from them, because I feel like it really helped focus them. And look, you won a game without your best defensive player on the road in the playoffs. That's like check, check, and check. Now you get to come home for 2. If you can figure out a way to win these next 2 games and you go back on the road with a 3-1 lead, oh, baby. Oh, baby. New York will be playing so tight. And that's the thing. I think Detroit plays a style of basketball that frustrates and gets underneath the skin of the Knicks players. And I think a lot of times Knicks players are looking at the referees like, you're not going to call that? You're not going to make that call? What are you doing? Why aren't you making that call? And it takes them out of the game. They get so worked up and they start paying so much attention. Even Tom Thibodeau is paying attention to the referees more than he's paying attention to the game. So, like, when half of your attention is diverted to what's going on with the officials and whether or not they're going to make a call, it just allows the Pistons to sit there and just take care of business and do what they've got to do. And you're right. Cade is blossoming before our eyes. Cade is becoming an X factor. There was a point early in Game 2 where it was like a triple team that came over to him, right? He was dribbling the ball. He's near the outside of the arc, and he ends up cutting between 2 defenders, does a spin move around another defender, and he hits a baby J, and it goes right through the hoop. And I was like, man, that is silky. That is smooth. That is a dude who right now is playing with a lot of confidence. And coming off of a Game 1 where he turned the ball over at the very end at a just egregious rate, that was good to see. That was fun to see. That shows you that he sat down, talked with JB Bickerstaff. They devised the game plan. They figured some stuff out, and he didn't bring that into that game. It was all about closing. That game 2, they showed up in first quarter, all about closing. Second quarter, all about closing. Third quarter, all about closing. Fourth quarter, all about closing. And then you get a guy that you made a trade for that you gave up nothing, and Dennis Schroeder, and he hits a big three-pointer for you to help ice that game. That's big time. And like I said, you're doing all of this without a key cog, without a guy who we said when we previewed this series has to play big for this team, has to go out there, has to keep his composure, and has to help on the glass, and has to help down low offensively to get a couple of buckets. He's not playing right now. And you're a little bit more optimistic than I am, thinking that he's going to be able to come back. I don't know if he comes back this series. I think they've got a bit of a tough road to hoe without him. But showing that you can do it in game 2, away from home, trying to figure some new things out, playing guys a little bit out of position, you were able to come away with a win. You took one on the road, and that was the goal. You take one on the road, and then you can come back home. And if you can take 2 at home, you are in a prime position to move on to the next round, and that's what we're looking for. This is not going to be an easy out for any team, and I think they might be in the Knicks' heads, and I think they might have the Knicks' number. I'm excited for where this series goes, and it's been fun to watch the Pistons these first 2 games.
No doubt. And let's go. Let's have a chance, because I think the Pistons, if they get on a roll, maybe make some noise in the East. Now, just turning our attention quickly to the Tigers. They win a series against the Royals, win the first game against the Padres. All is smooth, baby. You're doing some good things. The bats are starting to heat up at home. I think it was a perfect homestand to come back after a disappointing Brewers series. Look, it's going to happen. You're going to face some times where the bats go cold and your offense you had a lull there against the Brewers. And it's okay. It happens. But I think the number one thing that's important is this baseball team, when you have Skubal, Flaherty, and Jackson Jobe, I just don't see extended losing streaks. And I think that there's opportunities for some wins here. And there's a lot to like about the Detroit Tigers. The Tigers are in the midst of a series with the Padres and then coming up with the Orioles. So it's going to be a good litmus test against good baseball teams. And it sucks because you and I are not really all that good. We're not going to love Montero coming up. But, hey, listen, we don't want to cheer the demise of a player, but hopefully nobody ever takes anything we say personally. But when Kreidler got optioned to Toledo, I think the fan base got a little bit of a jolt saying, all right, not him. We don't like him. And I just think that, not personally, but the play on the field was not indicative of what was a standard defensively when you were brought in as a defensive person. And then it was okay, but his bat was atrocious, and he gets optioned to Toledo, and there's something better where it's just a simply put addition by subtraction.
Yeah, and look, the thing that I feel has been the most exciting about the Tigers, right? You talk about Kreidler and not really being able to bring it offensively, and his defense, okay, right? Realize this team is pretty banged up still, right? This team has limped into the beginning of this season. This team has done a lot of really good things while dealing with some injuries, specifically to their offensive roster and to their defensive roster. I mean, you were down a couple of guys. And I think what has been most spectacular about what you're getting with these Tigers is they're never out of a game. This team is scratching and clawing, and they are winning games. Fall down early by 2 runs, 3 runs. Next thing you know, you go to the 5th, you go to the 6th inning, and this team puts up a little bit of a crooked number, and now they're winning 3-2, 4-3. And once they turn it over to the bullpen has been lights out. So knock on some wood that we don't give them the DocNJock curse here, but the bullpen has been lights out. The bullpen has, I think it's a top 5 ERA in all of Major League Baseball. They've been so impressive. So if you can get them a bit of a lead, you're going to turn it over, and they're going to close out the game for you. So you're getting timely hits. You're getting a lot of good offense, which is something we didn't necessarily think you were going to get. And it's not just home runs that you're getting. You're getting guys on base, and you're helping to move them around the bags, which that was a bit of a problem in the Dodger series. That was a bit of a problem as you were coming out of the Dodger series. So it's been good to see that this team is growing early on in the season. The team is able to scratch out some offense, and then you're able to turn it over to some reliable arms at the back end of your rotation who's able to seal the deal for you. And I think that's been what's been most impressive. And you're doing all of this while you've got guys rehabbing and guys working their way back into the lineup. So there's no rush for them to necessarily come back, get healthy, then come back and let's perform. Let's go. So it's been a lot of fun to see. And look, I'm going to keep saying it until it's not impressive anymore. What Spencer Torkelson is doing is a lot of fun to watch and is a lot of fun to see. What a guy like Casey Mize is doing is a lot of fun to watch and is a lot of fun to see. I'm excited for what these young arms are being able to bring to this team, and I really like what you're getting out of this bullpen. It's been awesome, dude. And the fact that I can show up on Easter, and I've got my stepdad and I've got my father-in-law, and the first thing they say to me, "How about those Tigers? How about those Tigers?" This is stuff that we would never say a couple of years ago. This is stuff that we didn't talk about because you didn't want to talk about the Tigers. You didn't want to be sad. And now, Tigers, they're primetime viewing. You're going through, you're flipping the channels, and you're putting the Tigers game on while you're eating dinner. So it's been a lot of fun to watch the Tigers. It's been a lot of fun to watch them grow. And I feel like this team right now is just lethal, and they're white hot, and they are one of the best teams in Major League Baseball. And I'd honestly, when I look at their lineup and I look at their roster, and I'm like, I just don't understand how they're getting it done, but they're getting it done. You're taking on you're in a series with a Padres team that is one of the best in Major League Baseball, and you're able to eke out wins. Like, let's go Tigers, man. It's been a lot of fun.
No doubt about it. And it's just a fun time to be a fan of Detroit sports. It's a great opportunity now for the teams. Now you see the fruits of the labor, and now the Red Wings just got to pick up the slack and have a key offseason with some big time moves to be able to kind of avoid the Dylan Larkin boo-boo face that we are starting to see on an annual basis. If you agree or disagree with anything that we've said today, hit us up on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. Follow Adam on Twitter /X at AdamRSTROZ. Did we hit a nerve? Do you agree? Do you feel like it has to be edge or bust? Do you feel like the Lions, this draft is marquee for them to replace some key talent? Let us know. I look forward to interacting with everybody, reacting to what the Detroit Lions are going to do over the next couple of days. It's going to be a fun opportunity. Thanks, everybody, for subscribing. Just let one person know, hey, you listen to this podcast and you've made it all the way to this point. Just say, hey, there's a couple guys grinding since 2013. Finally got to see a playoff win with their basketball team after 1,000 podcasts. And it was a crazy revelation, but one in which it was worthwhile to know that we stuck through it to be able to at least talk about one here on the podcast. And I can't wait to do it all again next week with my guy, Adam, the Jock Strozinski.
You fucking podcasters. I said don't let them in here.